Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into a really fascinating, maybe even high-stakes market within the EU. We're looking at iGaming in Bulgaria.
That's right. And we're digging into a pretty comprehensive country-specific report. It's got all the hard data regulations, tax, player experience, the conditions for operators,
Yeah.
the works.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to pull out the key insights for you, to figure out what makes Bulgaria tick in this space.
Exactly. And that's what we do here at the Gambling Databases Research Team. We focus on delivering these, deep analyses, helping you understand how the industry actually functions on the ground, market by market. What are the real challenges?
At Bulgaria. Well, right away, the data throws up this big contradiction, doesn't it?
It really does. You look at the numbers. Fully regulated, pushing past €500 million in GGR this year. EUR 561 million projected. Over 1 million active online players.
Sounds great so far.
Right? And the overall market attractiveness rating in our sources reflects that a solid 8.0 out of 10. Very appealing.
And then you see the other score.
But then, you see the operator ease score. And it's just 6.5 out of 10. That's remarkably low.
So, super attractive market, but incredibly tough to operate in. How does that work? We need to unpack that. Why is it so good for players, but so, brutal for the operators?
Well, the huge piece of that puzzle, maybe the main piece for players, is the incentive structure.
Yeah.
It's simple and powerful.
Okay.
Your winnings. If you play with a licensed Bulgarian operator, they are 0% tax-free.
Yeah.
Completely.
Wow. Zero tax for the player.
Zero. That's an enormous draw. It basically channels almost everyone into the regulated market, which, is good for the government, too. They get their tax revenue just from the operators instead.
Okay, so the burden shifts entirely to the operators. Let's dig into why it's so tough for them. Starting with the regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic framework sounds okay, right? 2012 Gambling Act, National Revenue Agency overseeing it. All the main products are legal sports, casino, poker.
The framework itself is comprehensive, yes, all standard stuff. But the financial pressure, that's ramped up very recently and quite sharply.
How?
Well, first off, the tax on gross gaming revenue, the GGR tax. Beginning of 2024, it jumped from 15% up to 20%.
Ouch. That's a big hike.
It's a 33% relative increase, basically, on their main income stream. Now, Bulgaria does have the EU's lowest corporate income tax, only 10%.
Okay, so that helps a bit.
A bit. But when you combine the 20% GGR tax with that 10% corporate tax, the effective rate on their gross profit lands somewhere around 28 to 30%. That's a hefty chunk right out of the gate.
Right. But that's not even the biggest shocker that dragged down that operator e-score, is it? The real bombshell was about advertising.
That was the game changer. Absolutely. Kicked in May 2024.
And what did it do?
It was practically a full stop on gambling ads across most major media. We're talking TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, and crucially, most online media run by Bulgarian publishers.
Wait, so no TV ads, no radio spots, no banners on major local news sites?
Pretty much. It just wiped out the main channels operators use to reach potential customers. The broad reach stuff, gone.
It sounds like they, bricked up the front door. If you can't advertise easily, how do you even let those million players know you exist, especially if you're new?
It forces them into much narrower and often more expensive channels.
Yeah.
You're looking at search engine marketing, heavy reliance on affiliate marketing.
Affiliates. Is that straightforward?
Well, that's the thing. Affiliates are operating in what sources call a regulatory gray area. It's not explicitly banned, but it's not clearly regulated either. Then there's social media, also a bit uncertain legally, and sports sponsorships. That's about it.
So costs must have shot up.
Dramatically. The sources are clear. This led to dramatic increases in customer acquisition costs, no question.
Okay, so it's expensive to get players, and then are they also making it harder to keep them playing? What about player protection?
Yeah, that's another area tightened up significantly. Responsible gambling measures are becoming much stricter.
Like what?
Well, the big one is self-exclusion. The minimum period someone can self-exclude for. It went from just 30 days up to 1 full year.
A whole year minimum.
A full year. Minimum. That's actually one of the longest mandatory minimums in Europe.
Wow, that's more than just a compliance checkbox. A year-long exclusion, that must wreak havoc on an operator's ability to forecast revenue from a player, right? It basically wipes out their value for that period.
Completely. And it's not a theoretical problem. The data from early 2025 showed 54,000 people already on that national exclusion list.
54,000 out of about 1 million active players.
Exactly. That's 5.4% of the entire active player base locked out for at least a year. And there's more potentially coming.
Oh.
There are proposals for mandatory session limits, like 4 hours maximum per session for adults, and even stricter, 2 hours for players under 24.
So the trend is pretty clear. Make it expensive to find players and limit how much they can play once you've found them.
That's the pattern, yeah. Tougher acquisition, stricter playtime.
Okay, the regulatory hurdles are obvious. Let's pivot to the money side directly. The cold hard cash needed just to open the doors. This must be where that 6.5 operator ease score really bites.
Oh, absolutely. And maybe the biggest single financial barrier isn't even the ongoing taxes. It's the upfront capital requirement, the capital lockup.
What does that involve?
Operators have to deposit and, crucially, maintain BGN 1.5 million. That's about EUR 767,000 in paid-in share capital.
Maintain. So it's not just a one-time deposit.
Correct. Think of it like,
Okay.
like mandatory reserves. Cash you have to prove you have, sitting there untouched.
And you can't use it for running the business, for marketing, staff,
Yep.
tech.
Nope. It's locked capital. It has to stay there, inaccessible for operations for the entire 5-year license period.
Okay, so nearly €750,000 just parked.
And then you add the actual license fees on top of that. Application fees, one-time fees, post-approval fees. They stack up to over EUR 265,000.
So before you've even hired your first customer support agent or paid for a single click, you're already north of EUR 1 million in upfront cash requirements and locked capital.
Easily. Well over €1,000,000 just to get licensed and have the required capital in place.
That immediately prices out smaller startups, doesn't it? You need serious backing.
Absolutely. This is not a market for lean, agile entrants. You need deep pockets from day one.
And even if you have the €1,000,000+ to get started, once you are operational, you slam into that customer acquisition cost wall we talked about the call rate.
Exactly. That's where the ad ban really hits the bottom line day to day. The sources estimate that Shinkots 2, the average cost to acquire one single new depositing player, is somewhere between EUR 100 and EUR 300.
Per player. EUR 100 to 300.
Per player. And trending towards the higher end of that range, probably because of the competition. You've got, 15 to 22 licensed operators all fighting over that same million-player pool using the same limited expensive channels.
That seems unsustainable if the players aren't spending a lot. What's the average revenue per user, the ARPU?
Right now, the ARPU is around EUR 400 per year. So if you're spending EUR 300 to get a player who brings in EUR 400 in their first year, well, the margins are razor thin before you account for platform costs, staff, everything else.
So how does that business model even work in the short term? It sounds like you'd be losing money on every new player initially.
You likely are. And that brings us to a really critical point from the sources.
Yeah.
You need high player retention, yes, but you also need patient capital. Loads of it.
Man.
Meaning the reality check is stark, break even, typically projected at 12 to 24 months after you launch.
1 to 2 years of likely losses.
Yes. You absolutely have to be prepared and funded to absorb losses for up to 2 years. It's a long game.
Is there light at the end of the tunnel for those who can stick it out?
There is, actually. The sources do indicate that mature, established operations can achieve pretty healthy EBITDA margins, think 30 to 40%. That's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it can be profitable. But getting there, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay, so a tough climb for operators. Let's flip the coin now and look at why players might actually love this market, despite the operator struggles. You mentioned the tech infrastructure.
Yeah, this part is genuinely impressive and maybe a bit surprising. Bulgaria's digital setup is, frankly, world-class, better than many places in Western Europe.
Oh, really? How so?
Get this, smartphone penetration is almost universal, 97%. And the mobile internet speeds, they average 172 Mbps.
Whoa, 172 Mbps on mobile? That's incredibly fast. Faster than a lot of home broadband connections.
Exactly. That kind of speed makes everything buttery smooth. Downloading apps, streaming live casino feeds in high definition, placing in-play bets, no lag.
Which explains why mobile is king there.
Absolutely. Mobile accounts for 75% of all online gambling traffic. The infrastructure basically makes the mobile experience seamless, which is crucial for things like live dealer games or fast-paced sports betting.
Now, speaking of sports betting, given the strong football culture in that region, you'd instinctively think sports betting must be the dominant product, right?
You would think so. It's the logical assumption. But the data, the revenue data, tells a different story.
What does it say?
It's counterintuitive, but Bulgaria is overwhelmingly casino dominant. Online casino games generate somewhere between 65% and 67% of the total online GGR.
2/3 from casino, really?
Yeah. driven mostly by high-margin slots and increasingly live dealer games. And that casino segment, it's projected to keep growing, maybe 10 to 12% annually. Sports betting is definitely there. It's important, but it's a clear second place in revenue terms.
That's fascinating. And what about who's playing? Is the player profile what you'd expect?
Here's another unexpected finding. Demographically, 40% of the active online players are female.
40%. That seems quite high compared to other markets, doesn't it?
It's significantly higher than the regional average, yeah. Which means operators really need to think beyond just the traditional male sports bettor. Product mix, marketing messages, it all needs to be broader, more inclusive, with a strong focus on those casino products that are driving the revenue.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that operators need patience and focus on retention. Does the spending behavior support that long-term view? Is player value growing?
It is. That ARPU figure, the average revenue per user, it's currently healthy, around that EUR 400 mark annually we mentioned, but it's projected to climb quite a bit.
How much?
The forecasts suggest it could reach EUR 520 to EUR 560 per player per year by 2029.
Okay, so spending per player is increasing significantly.
Exactly, which tells you something important. The overall market growth isn't really coming from population growth. Bulgaria's population is actually declining slightly. The growth is coming from increased spending and engagement from the existing player base.
Which just underlines, again, how critical retention is for operators who make it through that initial tough period.
Precisely. It reinforces the need for that long-term strategy and keeping your current players happy and engaged.
So let's try and synthesize this. When you put all the pieces together, the player side, the operator side, what's the final picture of the Bulgarian iGaming market?
It's really a market of, well, stark contrasts. Two completely different realities living side by side.
How so?
On one hand, for players, it's almost ideal. You've got those tax-free winnings, amazing digital infrastructure with super fast speeds, plenty of choice because of the competition. It's a great environment.
But for operators?
But for operators, it's a really demanding environment. A huge capital lockup, nearly €750,000 just sitting there. High GGR taxes eating into margins. A near total ban on mainstream advertising, making customer acquisition incredibly costly. And that long, potentially 2-year path just to break even.
So success isn't guaranteed, even if you get in?
Not at all. The conclusion from the data is pretty clear. To succeed in Bulgaria, you likely need to be a well-capitalized, digitally savvy operator, someone focused ruthlessly on player retention, operational efficiency, and navigating that complex regulatory landscape for the long haul.
Which brings us to a final, maybe provocative thought then. Looking at this pattern, the high taxes, the massive capital requirements, the strict player protection like that 1-year self-exclusion, the ad ban. Is Bulgaria almost designing a market where only the biggest, most established, most compliant operators can actually survive?
It certainly looks like a potential outcome, maybe even an intended one. You could argue they're prioritizing stability and guaranteed tax revenue from a smaller pool of large compliant operators over, say, market dynamism or ease of entry for newcomers.
And perhaps, as a side effect or even a goal, reducing the overall visibility of gambling advertising and potentially mitigating problem gambling issues by making the barriers so high.
That could definitely be part of the calculation. Create a high-walled garden where only the giants can afford to play, ensuring control and tax flow while managing the social optics. It's a fascinating and potentially risky regulatory strategy.
A really complex picture. Thanks for walking us through all the angles on this.
My pleasure.
And just to remind you, this deep dive was drawn from a very detailed, country-specific report put together by the Gambling Databases research team.
Yeah, our whole aim is to give you that clear, data-driven picture of how the gambling industry really works in each specific market. The rules, the costs, the player behavior, all the essential stuff.
So if you want to dig into the full report on Bulgaria or explore analyses of other markets, including all the details on those operator ease and player access scores we mentioned,
you can find it all on our website. Just visit gamblingdatabases.com.
That's gamblingdatabases.com.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.